People often say, betrayal never hides well. But when the first sign of my husband's infidelity appeared, it wasn't an unfamiliar perfume or a loose shirt button. It was a notification from the bank. $385, The Ivy, Los Angeles. A restaurant so beautiful even memories tread carefully there. The same place where Daniel once held my hand, raised his glass and toasted. We've made it through 10 years together. His promise back then sounded sweet. No matter how high you fly, I'll always be your anchor. 3 years later, in that same place, whose hand was he holding? I slowly lowered my phone, as if moving faster would make the world collapse. Daniel had told me he was in San Francisco today, tied up with a 3-day financial conference. He didn't realize that credit cards never lie. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. But inside I was crumbling. A fine, icy crack slithered through every fiber of my being. I, Abigail Turner, 42 years old, founder and CEO of Turner & Company with over 30 employees, was being betrayed by my husband in the oldest, most pathetic way possible. Wine, rosés, and lies wrapped in a polished smile. That evening when Daniel walked through the door, everything about him was still perfectly on script. Crisp suit, the right smile, a polite kiss on my cheek, as if we were just two strangers sharing a house out of obligation. "How was work today?" He asked like he cared, but his eyes had already drifted past me, avoiding mine entirely. I gave him a smile. Just enough to avoid suspicion. Busy, as usual. But I like it that way. Daniel seemed satisfied, thinking I was still the woman too absorbed in growth charts to notice him turning away. But I wasn't stupid. And I wasn't so easily blinded by his smooth lies. The next day, I didn't seek comfort from friends. Instead, I called Ryan Matthews, a cybersecurity specialist who had once saved my company during a data breach. "I don't care how you do it," I said evenly. "I want to know everything about Daniel Turner for the past 6 months, every single detail." Ryan didn't ask why. He simply said, "Give me 3 days." That night, while Daniel slept soundly, I opened my laptop, fingers typing rhythmically as if planning a major campaign. Outside, the city lights blinked indifferently, but in that room, a battle had quietly begun. I didn't need pity. I didn't need apologies. I needed results. And Daniel would be the first to understand what happens when you underestimate me. 3 days later, Ryan's report arrived. Madison Clark, 29, Client Relations Specialist. Blonde waves, classic blue eyes, and a gallery of luxury travel photos plastered with the hashtag work trip. But Madison had no idea that every step she took had been meticulously documented into irrefutable evidence. Plane tickets, perfectly matching Daniel's so-called business trips. 4-star hotel bills in San Diego, booked for 2, but paid through the corporate account Daniel managed. Blurry yet undeniable photos of them holding hands, walking into a Japanese restaurant in Beverly Hills. I didn't need Madison Clark to introduce herself. I already knew exactly who she was, thanks to Daniel's own words in his text messages. Abigail isn't the woman she used to be. She's obsessed with work, cold as ice. When I'm with you, I actually feel like a real man. Leaving her isn't easy. The shared assets are complicated, but you understand that, right? I thought I was prepared for this moment. But no. Those words still pierced me with more precision than any physical blow. Not because Daniel cheated, but because he had the audacity to use me as his excuse for being a coward. I could picture him wallowing in self-pity, painting himself as the poor husband trapped in a loveless marriage with an ice queen businesswoman. How laughable. He used to brag about my ambition. Used to say I was the reason he wanted to be a better man. But when my shadow grew too large, he took the easiest way out. Shrinking himself, hiding behind cheap complaints, and worse, seeking comfort in the arms of a naive younger woman. I leaned back in my chair, revulsion seeping into my veins. Not toward Madison? She was just a small piece on this chessboard. What disgusted me most was Daniel's weakness. My success had become his excuse to betray me. That bitter truth hit me hard. Men admire strong women only when it makes them feel stronger. But the moment their fragile ego feels threatened, admiration turns into resentment. That evening when Daniel came home, I was no longer the same. Still the same Abigail, still the simple black dress, still the calm eyes. But inside, something had cracked beyond repair. "You look tired," Daniel said, his hand barely resting on my shoulder, as if afraid to touch the truth. "Just numbers. Nothing more," I replied slowly, letting him lie to himself that everything was fine. Daniel didn't realize that while he feared an Abigail who would scream and throw things, I was sitting here, calmly calculating my next move. I had used this very composure to negotiate with corporations 10 times bigger than mine. I had turned the tide with a single raised eyebrow and a cold remark. Daniel never realized he had just triggered my most dangerous weapon, strategic silence. That night, while he slept soundly, I reopened all the data Ryan had sent. Every receipt, every photo, every message was neatly organized in separate folders. I didn't need to make a scene. I didn't need to play the role of the pitiful, betrayed wife. I knew exactly how to make people fall without ever raising my voice. I pulled up the final file on the screen, a detailed spreadsheet of business trips, perfectly aligned with Daniel's secret dates. A faint smirk curled at the corner of my lips. His carelessness, his blind confidence, had made it easier than ever to map out his betrayal. My hand hovered over the mouse as my gaze pierced through the glass window. Out there, Los Angeles glittered under the neon lights. But right now, I knew exactly who was about to outshine them all. Tomorrow, Madison Clark would receive an interview invitation from Turner & Company, a dream position she never imagined would come from Daniel Turner's wife. The only thing she wouldn't know, not yet, was who was really pulling the strings. By then, both Daniel and Madison would understand what it means to pay the price. My way. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Not because of an important meeting, but because today I was launching a much more personal campaign. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow reflecting off my steaming coffee. The internal recruitment system of Turner & Company appeared, as familiar as the back of my hand. But this time, my target wasn't a marketing expert or a financial analyst. It was the young woman who had unknowingly stepped onto my chessboard, Madison Clark. I spent 2 hours crafting the job posting for a senior client development specialist, a role meticulously designed to fit Madison's exact qualifications: client relations experience, excellent communication skills, and above all, ambition, big enough to blind her to the truth. Attractive starting salary, exceptional benefits, clear career growth path. But the one thing Madison wouldn't realize? The person behind this career dream door was the very wife Daniel had tried so hard to keep hidden. Daniel had always been careful to separate his world from mine. He never brought Madison to events where I appeared. Never spoke seriously about my work. To Madison, I was probably just the cold, busy wife, a distant concept, nothing more. That only made my plan more perfect. I sent the job description to the HR department, giving one clear instruction: prioritize candidates from real estate firms in the Beverly Hills area. No need to mention names. I knew well Madison would be the first to spot that listing on LinkedIn, the exact kind of position she dreamed of. 3 days later, Madison's application landed in the recruitment inbox. I wasn't surprised. Her appearance was the final piece I had been waiting for. I didn't contact her directly. Everything proceeded by the book. Initial screening by HR, technical interview by the client development team. I simply observed from the shadows, like a director watching her carefully orchestrated play unfold. The second interview took place at Turner & Company's main office, a sleek glass building in downtown Los Angeles. From the top floor conference room, behind a one-way mirror, I watched Madison's every move. She walked in with a blend of confidence and nerves. A tasteful beige dress, hair softly curled, eyes lighting up as she spoke about client retention strategies, about the subtle art of negotiation. I had to admit Madison was capable, but that only made my plan all the more satisfying. Daniel always bragged about how he was mentoring Madison, that he was guiding a young talent. How laughable. Even Madison herself didn't realize she was walking step by step on the path I had already laid out. After the interview, the head of client development reported to me, "Madison is our top candidate. If the CEO approves, we'll send her the offer this week. I nodded. Do it. I want her to start as soon as possible. That evening, Daniel came home late. As always. Traffic was terrible, he said, loosening his tie with that fake exhaustion. Have you had dinner yet? Not yet. I was waiting for you. I smiled, lifting my wineglass slowly. Ha. Tomorrow, I might have to fly to San Diego. Urgent meeting, Daniel announced, eyes glued to his phone. I knew exactly what that urgent meeting really was. And this time, I would be the one deciding who gets to wait. Madison would receive her job offer tomorrow morning. She would officially become part of Turner & Company. And Daniel? He would continue living in his illusion of keeping everything perfectly hidden. But this chess game wasn't being played in fancy restaurants or hotel suites. This was business. And in this arena, I made the rules. While Daniel believed he was in control, he wouldn't realize every move he made had long been in the palm of my hand. And Madison, that young woman, would soon learn her first real-life lesson. Behind every glamorous opportunity there are traps, set by women who understand exactly how the power game works. Madison accepted the job offer faster than I expected. Maybe the salary was too attractive. Maybe Turner & Company's reputation in the industry was too tempting. Or maybe she never imagined she was walking straight into the home turf of the wife Daniel had kept hidden for over a year. On her first morning, Madison showed up exactly as I anticipated. Cream-colored blouse, fitted pencil skirt, blonde hair tied low, her face lightly made up, just enough to leave a good impression without being too flashy. She walked in with the HR team, beaming as she shook hands with new colleagues, her eyes gleaming with the excitement of someone who believed a new chapter was unfolding for her career. I stood behind the glass wall of my office, watching every tiny expression. Madison had no idea who was observing her. To her, I was just a vague name on the organizational chart. CEO Abigail Turner. Some high-level executive Daniel had never seriously mentioned. That was perfect. That afternoon, I intentionally joined the welcome lunch for new employees. Not flashy, not distant. I shook hands with each person, exchanged a few words about job expectations, keeping the poised professionalism of a leader. When it was Madison's turn, I smiled. Welcome to Turner & Company, Madison. I've heard a lot about your impressive background. Thank you, Mrs. Turner. It's an honor to work here, Madison replied, her eyes showing a hint of caution, facing the big boss but maintaining her confident demeanor. Not a single sign that she suspected anything. I let my gaze meet hers, just long enough to plant a subtle unease. Not threatening, not overt. Just a presence that made the other person wary, without even knowing why. From that day on, Madison officially entered the whirlwind of Turner & Company. I personally assigned her to the most demanding projects. Contracts requiring late-night work, even weekends. I didn't need to be directly involved. The executive team, following my quiet directives, fully understood Madison was a strategic piece at this stage. Daniel used to complain that I only cared about work and neglected our marriage. Well, now his mistress would experience that firsthand. Endless meetings, last-minute revisions, surprise client dinners, all carefully orchestrated to consume Madison's every waking moment. I still remember the first time Madison asked to leave early, citing a family emergency. I simply smiled and nodded. But that very afternoon she received an urgent email from the client development team. Documents for tomorrow morning's meeting need Madison's final review. Urgent. That evening, when Daniel came home, he looked more irritable than usual. Seems like everyone's busy these days, he said, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. Even the new hire? I heard you just recruited someone from Beverly Hills? Yes, I replied, my voice as light as discussing the weather. She shows promise, but needs a lot of training in crisis management. I want her to get familiar with high-pressure projects right away. Daniel nodded, completely oblivious to the layers beneath my words. Week after week, I watched changes unfold from both sides. Madison began to show signs of exhaustion. Romantic dates with Daniel were constantly canceled because of late work hours. Their texts grew sparse. The initial sparkle in her eyes faded. Daniel changed too. His patience, always a thin facade, started to crack. Evenings spent slumped on the sofa, scrolling through his phone lifelessly. Short, irritable remarks about being drained at work all day, though I knew well, he wasn't the one being drained. I didn't need to intervene directly. Madison's ambition and Daniel's selfishness had become my most effective tools. In just 2 months, Madison, once a dreamy girl believing she could have it all, was swallowed by the work grind, losing even her private weekend evenings. Meanwhile, Daniel, who once thought he controlled everything, now had only his whiskey glass to vent his frustrations. I didn't have to lower myself for revenge. I simply created the right conditions, and they exposed their true selves to each other. The chess game continued, and the pawns had begun pushing each other toward the edge. I wasn't in a hurry. Revenge isn't a punch to the face. It's an extended hand, gentle, polite, but once grasped they'd realize too late it was a trap. Madison was right where I wanted her. She had been working at Turner and Company for nearly 2 months. Each day she sank deeper into the system I had meticulously crafted. But keeping Madison busy wasn't enough. I wanted her to see Daniel fully, without embellishment, without the sweet facade he had worn to seduce her. The most effective way? Introduce Madison to Daniel's so-called kingdom, the finance industry. I arranged for her to lead a project with Crownstone Financial, a prestigious brokerage firm and a longtime partner of Daniel's company. The amusing part was Crownstone was infamous for its old boys club culture, where men in expensive suits negotiate deals while swapping vulgar gossip behind colleagues' back. I knew exactly who Madison would interact with, and I knew they wouldn't hold back when talking about Daniel. "Madison, I want you to lead this negotiation team," I said during Monday's meeting. "The clients are sharp, seasoned. They won't be convinced by pretty numbers alone. But I believe you're up to the task." Madison smiled, but I caught a flicker of worry in her eyes. She knew Crownstone was a major league. What she didn't know was that it would be the stage where every illusion she had about Daniel would crumble. The first meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at Crownstone's headquarters. I didn't accompany her. I didn't need to. I had done enough to let the fire ignite itself. And it burned faster than I anticipated. That afternoon, Madison returned trying hard to maintain composure. But behind the lipstick and firm gaze, I saw the cracks. She spent the next hour in the conference room, head down, combing through proposal drafts, her hands trembling slightly with every page she turned. That evening, while I was still at the office, my phone lit up with a message from Ryan, my cybersecurity expert. She heard everything they talked about Daniel for 30 minutes without holding back. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes, imagining the scene. Madison sitting in a meeting room, surrounded by raw, unfiltered stories about Daniel, the man who had once played the victim husband card so effortlessly to win her over. Daniel Turner, that guy's a gold digger, tried to siphon company funds for a Vegas trip with some girl last time. Gosh, he's all talk, never delivers. If it weren't for his wife backing him up, Crownstone would have dumped him ages ago. Heard his wife just closed a major deal for Turner and Company. That woman's a powerhouse. I didn't need to be there to know how each word must have pierced Madison's pride. The next day, I called Madison into my office. "How did the meeting go yesterday?" I asked evenly. She pressed her lips together, maintaining a professional facade. They were quite direct, but I understood their expectations. "Have you ever worked with clients like that before?" I tilted my head, my gaze lingering on her hands clenched tightly on her lap. Madison hesitated. "No, but I think I learned a lot." I nodded slightly. She wouldn't tell me everything that had transpired. That was fine. My intention was for her to experience it herself, to confront a version of Daniel she had never seen before. In the following weeks, I continued creating opportunities for Madison to engage with Daniel's colleagues and partners, from industry seminars, networking events, to joint venture meetings. And with each encounter, Madison collected another piece of the real Daniel. No longer the charming, gentle man who listened attentively, but a smug, sycophantic opportunist who belittled subordinates and would trade his dignity for a sliver of standing in the finance world. I didn't need to teach Madison that. The people around Daniel were doing it for me. All I did was open the door. Gradually, the way Madison looked at me changed. She was no longer the naive girl who believed she held the heart of a good man. She began to understand. She was just a pawn, a distraction Daniel was willing to trade when it suited him. And the bitterest truth, she realized every luxury gift Daniel had given her, the wine-filled evenings, the lavish getaways, were all paid for by the very woman sitting across from her. I didn't need to spell it out. Madison was smart enough to piece it together herself. That afternoon when she quietly asked to leave early, I didn't stop her. I knew. From that moment, Madison would no longer look at Daniel with dreamy eyes. The chess game wasn't over, but the opponent across the table had started to realize they were being played. As for me, I was only just getting started. The Meridian Financial Year-End Gala was always a highlight in Los Angeles's finance circles. A chance to show off, network, and most importantly, maintain those mutual benefit relationships. This year, Turner & Company was invited as a new strategic partner. I knew Daniel would be there, flashing his polished smile, tailored suit, and exchanging hollow handshakes. What he didn't expect was that his so-called pawn, Madison Clark, would also be present, but not as a secret mistress. I personally instructed the PR team to send Madison an invitation, introducing her as the client development representative for Turner & Company. A perfect move, legitimate, and impossible to refuse. I could already imagine Daniel's reaction upon hearing Madison would attend. Panic? Confusion? Or perhaps still clinging to the illusion that he had things under control? It no longer mattered. The board was set, and tonight, every piece would reveal itself. As I stepped into the Grand Regent Hotel's ballroom, the crystal chandeliers cascaded light onto the marble floor like a golden carpet. Daniel stood near the entrance, looking as polished as ever, but his gaze faltered when it landed on me. "Abigail, you look stunning," he approached, offering the smile that once made me melt. "Thank you. I heard Meridian has had a prosperous year," I replied, my tone light as air. Behind him, Madison entered. A teal satin dress hugged her slender figure, heels clicking sharply against the marble. She froze when our eyes met. The first time since everything had come to light? And in that same moment, Daniel noticed Madison too. His face shifted, a flash of shock, quickly masked by forced composure, but his tightly pressed lips betrayed him. I smiled, as if everything was unfolding exactly as planned. The evening played out like any typical gala. Wine, half-sincere conversations, empty congratulations. Daniel kept busy avoiding Madison's gaze, while Madison was learning to hold her head high, in a room full of people who knew far more than she had imagined. When Meridian's CEO stepped onto the stage, I knew my moment had arrived. "Before we begin the main address, we'd like to take a few minutes to recognize some of our strategic partners who have been instrumental to Meridian's growth this past year," he announced. "And, in particular, we invite Mrs. Abigail Turner from Turner & Company to say a few words." Daniel stiffened. Madison looked up, her eyes wide, realizing there was no escape. I walked to the podium, each step slow but deliberate. The spotlight illuminated not just my carefully chosen crimson velvet dress, but also the cold sharpness behind my composed smile. "Thank you to Meridian for the gracious invitation. Turner & Company is proud to collaborate with you on these challenging and promising projects." I paused, scanning the audience, where Daniel gripped his glass tightly and Madison sat rigidly upright. "Over the past year, we've had the honor of working with outstanding individuals who have shown that dedication and honesty are the foundation of every lasting partnership." I deliberately emphasized the word honesty. "And today I'd like to introduce one such professional. She represents a new generation of specialists. Talented, passionate, and ready to take on any challenge. Please welcome Madison Clark." The room seemed to hold its breath for a moment. Madison stood up. Her hand trembled slightly, but she maintained her smile. She walked up to the stage, each heel strike echoing her discomfort. We shook hands, a formal gesture, but our eyes exchanged everything words could not. Madison will lead the client development division in the upcoming joint project between Turner & Company and Crownstone Financial. This is a major career milestone, and I have full confidence she will not disappoint," I concluded, passing her the microphone. Madison spoke a few polite lines about the importance of partnership, though her voice wavered slightly. Still, she managed to hold her composure. I respected her for that. When I took the microphone back, I looked straight at Daniel. "In business as in life, transparency and integrity are key. Deception, no matter how sophisticated, can never remain hidden under these lights. Daniel stood frozen. The entire room fell silent. But I didn't need him to react. I knew every word I had just spoken had cut straight through the fragile pride he was desperately clinging to. I wish you all a successful new year filled with genuine value, I smiled, stepping down from the stage to a round of polite yet murmuring applause. Madison quietly returned to her seat, but her gaze no longer avoided mine. She now fully understood this game, and she knew exactly who was guiding her hand. Outside the hotel, the night breeze swept through my hair. Cold, but not biting. My steps were light, steady, like the ticking of a chess clock nearing its end. Daniel could keep running. But from now on, every glance, every handshake, every congratulatory toast would remind him that a woman had just taught him what it meant to pay the price. And I still had one final move. I left the stage to a level of applause just right for politeness, yet just enough to avoid seeming detached. But within that crowd, I knew there were eyes secretly flicking toward Daniel, waiting to see his next move. And I knew he was afraid. Afraid that the storm he thought he could control had already begun to spiral beneath his feet. I wasn't in a rush. I let Daniel soak in those suffocating moments, as his confident mask slowly cracked under the oppressive silence of the entire room. After the Meridian CEO's speech, the party returned to its awkward clinking of glasses. But the air had shifted. Like a still lake disturbed by a stone, the ripples kept spreading. I raised my champagne glass, slowly making my way toward a small stage in the side hall, where they were preparing to honor top partners. The host greeted me with a polite bow. "May I ask for a few more minutes before you continue the next segment?" I asked, offering a thin smile. Of course they couldn't refuse. Turner and Company had just delivered Meridian's largest contract of the year, and I wasn't someone easily ignored. The lights softened. The microphone in my hand echoed crisply through the packed room of powerful figures. "I'd like to share something personal," I began, my tone warm but sharp enough to command attention. "To me, transparency isn't just a business principle. It's a way of life." Daniel stood less than 20 steps away. I could see his knuckles whiten as he gripped his glass. For 16 years, I've stood beside one person, not only as a spouse, but as a partner through the toughest startup days. We built together, endured together, and shared many wonderful moments. I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room. But as you all know, the value of a relationship doesn't lie in pretty photos or stories retold at galas. It lies in honesty, even when no one is watching. The air felt thick, still. Eyes began to turn toward Daniel. And so, today, among people who value substance over appearances, I want to announce an important decision. I lifted my chin, letting each word drop with deliberate clarity. Daniel Turner and I will officially end our marriage. The papers were filed this afternoon. The murmurs rolled through the crowd like a breaking wave. Some turned to look at Daniel, others looked at me, a mix of surprise and admiration in their eyes. Daniel stood motionless, his face drained of color, his jaw clenched as if slapped in front of the entire hall. Yet he struggled to maintain a stoic facade. A feeble, pitiful attempt. "This isn't a rash decision, nor is it a tragic ending," I continued, my voice softer now, yet no less cutting. "On the contrary, I see it as a turning point, an opportunity for both of us to live authentically, and to ensure that what truly matters is never obscured by shallow illusions." I paused, smiling. I hope that from now on each of us will value honesty, whether in contracts or in the relationships closest to us. There was no need to mention reasons, no need for a public takedown. But everyone present, from Daniel's old colleagues, financial partners, to those who had once taken his side, understood perfectly. And the best part was, Daniel couldn't deny it. No excuses. No salvaging. I lowered the microphone, handing it back to the visibly flustered host. The applause that followed wasn't loud and mindless. It was deliberate, rhythmic, from those who had just witnessed a masterstroke executed with precision. I turned and walked off the stage. The sharp clicks of my heels on the marble floor marked the final punctuation to every lie Daniel had ever built. As I passed him, Daniel forced a smile, but his eyes found no refuge. Around him, the space grew colder, as former allies quietly distanced themselves. Outside the ballroom, the Los Angeles night breeze carried a hint of cool moisture. I paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. No drama, no spectacle. But tonight, I had reclaimed everything. In the way a woman who knows her own worth should. And Daniel Turner, he was just now realizing he had lost the moment he thought he could outsmart me. After that night, there was no need for further words. News of the Meridian Gala spread faster than a cold draft on a Los Angeles summer evening. Not as a scandal splashed across headlines, but enough for the finance circles to whisper over cocktails and closed-door conferences. He got called out by his wife right on stage. She announced their divorce in front of all their partners. No one wants to be associated with a man who can't even protect his own reputation. In Daniel's world, reputation was worth more than assets, and he had just lost both. The first week after the gala, Daniel still tried to play it cool. He showed up at the office in a brand new suit, flashing the same smirk that once masked countless lies. But every glance from his colleagues, every lukewarm handshake, told him his facade no longer worked. Crownstone Financial, his closest partner, was the first to pull out of projects involving Daniel. The official reason was internal restructuring. But I knew the harsh truth. No one wanted to bet on a man who failed at his own game. The fallout came swiftly and mercilessly. Meridian's board began stripping Daniel of authority. Major projects were reassigned. Strategic meetings, where Daniel once held the front seat, became mere courtesy invites, if that. 3 months later, Daniel was forced to resign. A voluntary resignation on paper, but everyone knew it was just a polite way to push him out without the public disgrace of termination. I didn't feel joy hearing the news, but I felt satisfied, because he had reaped exactly what he had sown. Meanwhile, our divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Daniel tried to negotiate a favorable settlement, but the evidence I had gathered, joint funds used for his business trips, suspicious transactions with Madison, silenced his lawyers immediately. "We're open to negotiating," his attorney began, but fell silent when I placed a thick folder of documents on the table. In the end, Daniel accepted all my terms. I kept the house. All Turner & Company shares were confirmed as premarital assets. And I even forced him to liquidate our joint real estate investments to compensate for the damages he caused the company. The man who once stood beside me as a life partner now sat quietly, signing each page with hollow eyes. After the divorce, Daniel had to sell the penthouse he once flaunted as his symbol of success. He moved into a small apartment in the suburbs, far from the glittering financial district he had once clung to. Daniel's career was left with nothing but severed connections and a shattered reputation. He settled for a low-level consulting position at a minor firm, where the name Daniel Turner was no longer a VIP pass, but merely a faint shadow of the past. As for me, I didn't stop. Turner & Company opened a London branch just 3 months after the divorce. The partnership with Crownstone flourished, and a wave of new European clients sought us out after witnessing how I handled personal crises with composure. No one remembered Daniel Turner as a significant figure anymore. But the name Abigail Turner appeared in conferences, on business magazine covers, as a textbook example of decisive, sharp yet fair leadership. Madison Clark? After the gala, she quietly accepted the transfer to our London office. I never reached out again. She understood perfectly why I had given her that exit route, and her choice of silence was the clearest answer. I didn't hate Madison. I had once been her, young, ambitious, too quick to believe in pretty lies. But the lesson she learned from Daniel would stay with her for life. As for me, every morning, looking over the city from the 32nd floor of Turner & Company, I no longer thought of Daniel, nor Madison. I only thought of one thing. A woman's true strength isn't in how she retaliates, but in how she rebuilds herself after everything has crumbled. Madison's flight to London took off on a chilly April morning. No farewells, no expectant eyes waiting at the gate. She left quietly, just as I had orchestrated from the very beginning. She accepted the position as Director of Client Development for Turner & Company's London branch, not with illusions of a glorious new chapter, but with the sobering clarity that comes after a hard fall. I wasn't surprised when her acceptance email landed in my inbox just 2 days after the Meridian Gala. Madison was smart enough to understand. The game was over, and it was time for her to leave the table if she wanted to salvage any shred of dignity and professional respect. 3 weeks later, as I was reviewing the market expansion plans for Asia, an email popped up on my screen. From Madison Clark. Subject, thank you and a lesson. I sat up straight, my eyes scanning each line. Mrs. Turner? I've been meaning to send this email for days, but honestly, I needed time to process everything. Thank you for giving me an opportunity, not just a job, but a chance to reflect on myself. I used to think I was in control. I believed in empty, sweet words. But in the end, the only thing left was a harsh lesson in clarity. I know I was wrong. Not just because of what happened with Daniel Turner, but because I let greed and shallow ambition cloud my conscience. Choosing to leave Los Angeles was my decision. But thanks to you, I understood what making the right move looks like when every illusion has crumbled. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I just want to thank you for not belittling me, even though you had every power to do so. I'll use this opportunity to do better. To grow up. Sincerely, Madison Clark. I read it again. No emotion, no bitterness, no sense of triumph. Because from the beginning this was never a story of punishment. I simply let the truth reveal itself, and let everyone choose how to stand up after falling. I didn't reply immediately. Business continued. Turner & Co. was in negotiations with a financial group in Tokyo. That contract mattered more than rehashing the past with Madison. 2 weeks later, when the international division sent the London branch report, I saw Madison's name listed as a project leader. She had begun her work professional and quiet. No flattery, no naive confidence. Just an employee learning how to do her job right. That was all I wanted. The only time we interacted again was during a strategic video conference with the London office. Madison delivered her report concisely, her eyes focused on the documents, neither avoiding nor seeking recognition from me. When the meeting ended, she said one simple sentence. Thank you, Mrs. Turner. I'll ensure the project stays on track as committed. I nodded. That was all, no more. I didn't need forgiveness. I didn't need remorse. The only thing that mattered was Madison had understood her own worth and learned that lesson without me having to teach it again. As for Daniel, he no longer appeared in meetings or major events. The name Daniel Turner existed only in the regretful conversations of a few who once knew him. After selling off all joint assets, he struggled in a mid-level consulting role at a small real estate firm in South Los Angeles. No one mentioned him as a rising star anymore. With a crumbling career and a tarnished reputation, Daniel became a textbook example of those who lose everything to illusion and weakness. I never looked back. My work and life continued on my terms. Turner & Co. officially opened its Tokyo office by the end of that quarter. London operated steadily, with Madison as a key figure. New York prepared for expansion into the fintech sector. Every step forward was the result of focus and determination. Not from noisy revenge, but from emotional control and wisdom in every decision. That evening, standing on the 32nd floor of Turner Tower, I watched the city fade into a soft golden glow. Old wounds might leave scars, but they do not define me. I chose to rebuild my life in my own way. And that is the ultimate price for those who once thought they could hide betrayal behind sweet words. As for Madison, she's walking her own path too. Not as an old rival, but as someone who fell and is learning how to rise again. 6 months after the Meridian Gala, I stood on the 35th floor balcony of Turner & Co., looking out at Los Angeles sprawling beneath my feet. The lights shimmered, traffic flowed endlessly. Life pulsing forward as if it had never known wounds, lies, or betrayal. And I realized so was I. I used to think revenge meant making the betrayer pay, forcing them to bow their heads in regret, to feel the same loss I had endured. But now, with Daniel erased from success stories and Madison quietly starting over, I understand. True victory is when you no longer need to look back. My life is no longer tied to other people's mistakes. Turner & Co. has gone global, not just my company, but a legacy I built from my loneliest days. London, Tokyo, New York. With each new office, I reaffirmed that my worth was never defined by being someone's wife, but by my own competence and resilience. That afternoon, after wrapping up a virtual meeting with a partner in Singapore, I received a coffee invitation from Ethan Harrington, CEO of Blackstone Investments, someone I'd briefly met at a financial summit earlier that year. The message was short and to the point. I know a quiet cafe on LA's West Side, perfect for those who prefer listening over talking. If you're free, I'd like to hear your thoughts on a potential collaboration between Turner & Co. and Blackstone. A polite invitation, no hidden undertones, but enough to tell me Ethan understood the value of brevity and respect. The meeting happened on a Friday afternoon. A small cafe tucked beneath an old ginkgo tree, unpretentious, serene. Ethan greeted me with a warm smile, his calm gaze reflecting someone who had seen life's highs and lows, but hadn't let cynicism erode his faith in people. We talked about business, emerging markets in Southeast Asia, and the potential of leveraging customer data in personal finance. The conversation stretched longer than planned because amidst the numbers, I unexpectedly found a resonance in how Ethan viewed the world. He didn't ask about my past. He didn't bring up the noise surrounding Daniel Turner. He simply listened, offered thoughtful insights, and respected the values I stood for. Before we parted, Ethan smiled. I used to think women like you had to constantly prove something to the world, but today I see you don't have to. Because your composure already says it all. I nodded slightly, neither denying nor feigning modesty. Because he was right. That evening, back in my new apartment, not the old penthouse shared with Daniel, but a space perfectly fitting a woman who knows exactly what she wants, I sat by the window sipping wine, thinking about the word rebirth. I was no longer the Abigail Turner who tried to balance career and family, who believed love alone could hold everything together. Nor was I the Abigail from those early days of betrayal, hiding the pain, plotting each calculated move. Now, I was simply a woman who knew she was enough. Strong enough to move forward without clinging to or tearing open old wounds. The chapter with Daniel was closed. I was writing my own new one. A chapter where success isn't a shield against hurt but a testament to real worth. A chapter where I could welcome new relationships, not to fill a void but to walk side by side, with mutual respect. Ethan might just be a beginning. Or merely a professional connection. But that no longer mattered. The only certainty, after everything, I was still at the helm of my own life. Abigail's story isn't just a tale of sharp-witted revenge, but a lesson on the true value of resilience and composure. When faced with betrayal, she chose to rise with intelligence and dignity, rather than drown in hatred. In real life, the greatest victory isn't destroying others, it's rebuilding yourself stronger and freer. True success is living life on your own terms. Quietly, but enough to make those who once underestimated you watch in silence. What do you think about how Abigail faced betrayal and rebuilt her life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life.